Shalom, shalom, kalalal Yahweh Shemel Shai. Just want to give all praises, glory, and honor due unto Yahweh Shemel Shai, Bahashem Rakah Kodash. The blondness to the apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone. To you I say shalom. This is the VOJ, the voice of Jacob. My name is Brother Kabar Ya'Allah. Lord willing, this will be edifying and thought-provoking in the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem Shai. Shalom unto the hopeful elect that comes out of the nation of Israel. So, we're going to talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income, because that's being pushed heavily out here right now. And when you come to think about it, Universal Basic Income is nothing but slavery, in a sense. It's going to put you in shackles, man, because now you're going to become dependent on UBI. And once you're dependent, you become a slave to it. And really, pretty much you're a slave to the government. Now with UBI, in order for you to get it or to receive it, you would have to be down with accepting a cashless society, a cashless system, and also receiving the MOTB, which is a mark. So, that puts you in captivity. In order for you to receive UBI, you have to be a slave to this system. So this falls right under Revelation chapter 13 and 16 on down. But I just want to say this, Universal Basic Income, I do believe it was inspired by the scriptures when you compare and you contrast it. Now, the Bible itself, man, is fascinating. The Bible doesn't explicitly mention Universal Basic Income as like a modern policy. However, it does contain certain principles and passages, being the scriptures and precepts, right, that do echo similar ideas, right? Because with UBI, it comes with what? What are they pushing? They're pushing economic fairness, sharing resources, and also taking care of the poor. That's all found in the scriptures, right? So I do believe UBI is inspired by the Bible, Yahweh Shemel Shai. It's just that in today's world, on how they're executing it, being the elites and the ones that control this place, it's not being used correctly, it's not being executed correctly, and it's not bringing forth righteousness. But that doesn't mean UBI is bad, right? So I have the definition here, Universal Basic Income. It says, is a policy proposed to provide all citizens with a regular unconditional cash payment to ensure a basic level of economic security. It is intended to address poverty and income inequality, and proponents see it as a potential solution for job displacement from automation. However, critics raise concerns about financial sustainability and potential impacts on the workforce. So, right. So, when you read it, on the surface, it looks good, but because these devils are in control of it, it's going to be turned into wickedness. Now, I got a precept. Let me get this. This is Psalms chapter 50, verse 16. 50, verse 16 here. And it says, but unto the wicked the Most High saith, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth, seeing thou hatest instruction, and cast my words behind thee? When thou sawest a thief, then thou consentest with him, and hast been a partaker with adulterers. So, the wicked, we know the wicked is Esau, Edom, pursuant to Malachi chapter 1 verse 4. So whenever they have the ability to do something good or do something positive by following the law, statutes, and commandments, they do the exact opposite. They cast the words behind themselves, and they forsake Yahweh Shemel Shai, and then they do their own thing. And that's Universal Basic Income. And the reason why I say it like this is because look at the top banking families that rule the earth. When you go back to the Rothschild family, you look at the progenitor of the Rothschild family, that's Meyer Amschel Bauer. He was a rabbi. So if you're a rabbi, that means you're a master and you understand the law, statutes, and commandments. So they know the law. Okay, Amschel Bauer and his sons and his descendants that came after him, they know the truth. They know what they're supposed to do. But what do they do with the truth? they use it for wickedness, because universal basic income is going to be used to lure people into accepting the mark of the beast and this beast system, right? But that doesn't mean UBI is bad. UBI is actually a good thing. And like I said, when you go into the Bible, it does contain certain principles and passages that do echo similar ideas that UBI is going into. You understand? So anyways, I already made that clear. So let's go into Leviticus chapter 25 verse 10. And it says, "And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed. For it is the jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In the year of this jubilee, you shall return every man unto his possession. And if thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or buyest aught of thy neighbor's hand, ye shall not oppress one another." Beautiful. "According to the number of years after the jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the fruits he shall sell unto thee." So pretty much, man, every 50 years debts were canceled, slaves were freed, and land returned to its original owners. So the jubilee pretty much sought to prevent long-term poverty and inequality by giving everyone a reset of some sort, and that ensured basic economic stability and fairness. And it's not a periodic cash payment, but it served a similar redistributive and dignity preserving function per se, right? So that's what UBI is about, right? So that's the parallel. The Jubilee is a form of what UBI stands for, right? And that's why I say UBI is really inspired by the Bible. It goes back to the law, statutes, and commandments, right? And the Jubilee is a law. Every 50 years, the slates are supposed to be wiped clean. Everybody's supposed to get a reset. All debts are supposed to be erased. Now, these devils can do that, but then they just want to do it this way, right? They just want to make you stay on welfare to receive POGI. That's welfare for short. But in the long run, this is not going to give people financial sustainability. This is not going to reduce the gap between the haves and the have-nots. This isn't going to help anybody in the long run. It's going to make you a slave, because if you were to do a jubilee, you would get out of debt. You're not going to be on that hamster wheel all the time. So there you go. I just compared and contrasted. So like I said, UBI, it's a good idea, but the way it's being executed today, it's wicked. Real UBI comes out of the Bible, and that's how we're supposed to do things in a nutshell. So let me get another precept here. Let's go into Leviticus chapter 19 verse 9. Notice it says sun-dry laws, how you're supposed to harvest your field. There's laws on that, right? So this is going into like the gleaning laws, and this is important. This is a part of UBI. This is a part of welfare, okay, or social welfare. So this is Leviticus chapter, which is UBI, right? Leviticus chapter 19 verse 9. "And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest. And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, your power." That's a command, right? That's a law. So this is Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 19. "When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, excuse me, and has forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. Yeah, so this is after you harvest. Let's just say you didn't harvest everything, or you forgot certain things, or certain things dropped off while they were harvested. You're not supposed to go back out there in the field to fetch it. You're supposed to just leave it. So, that's what these farmers do, or these rich people that have properties. They harvest every single thing and they don't leave anything. That's not right. And you're supposed to also open up your land to the poor so they can come in and take what they need. And you're not supposed to charge them. That's what these devils do. They'll charge you for every goddamn thing. So anyways, it says, it shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai thy power may bless thee in all the works of thy hands. When thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. Verse 22, and thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt. Yeah, this. You got to remember your humble beginnings, man. Go back to what happened to you when you were a bondman in Egypt. You were catching hell. And you were a servant at one point, and you were broke. You were down and under at one point. You didn't have things at one point, so now you gotta be thankful, and you gotta give some charity, right? Therefore, I command thee to do this thing. So that's a command. So hey, landowners, man, were commanded to leave part of their harvest for those without land or income. That's what this is going into. And I'm going to give you an example, right? I'm going to go into the example of Ruth, right? Ruth, the second chapter, right? Because Ruth was poor, man. Especially after becoming a widow, and when she returned to Bethlehem with her mother-in-law. I believe her mother-in-law's name was Naomi. They had no male provider. And she was very vulnerable and impoverished. And then Boaz, seeing that, he opened up his land to her. Right? I'm actually going ahead. And Boaz was a very rich man. He was wealthy. So, these rich people, especially of our own nation, they're supposed to be helping us out. Helping anybody out that's poor. And Israel's full of poor people, man. Israel. But you're supposed to be doing this in general, because the law, statutes, and commandments are universal. Everybody's supposed to follow the law, statutes, and commandments. If you're rich and you're wealthy, you have a lot of land, you're supposed to be really giving back, man. You're supposed to, but hey, we don't live in a perfect world, and it is what it is. But yeah, man, that's what you see here. So this is a parallel to UBI. This is a built-in form of social welfare, and it ensures that everyone had access to I don't know, I just slipped my mind all of a sudden. But it ensured that everyone had access to basic sustenance, regardless of employment or wealth. So I want to get that example here. I'm going to pull it up. This is Ruth chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 1. The subtitle says, Ruth gleans in Boaz's field. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Amalek, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess, which she wasn't, I believe, she was a Moabite. Yeah, she was a Moabite. Said unto Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him. I know there's a doctrine going around saying that she wasn't a Moabite, but she was, apparently. Anyways, it says, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap was too light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Amalek. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto reapers, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai be with you. And they answered him, Yahweh Bashem Yoshai bless thee. Then said Boaz unto a servant that was set over the reapers, whom damsel is this? You see, so his field was opened up onto her. Alright, so there you go. She was poor, she was impoverished. And I believe King David came out of this union. I think it was between Boaz and Ruth. I think he goes back to that line of Boaz, but I think he descends. I think that's his grandmother, I believe. I would have to recheck. I forget. I think it was King David. But you get the point. She was gleaning the field. Right? So this is a form of welfare. Right? This is a form of UBI. This is what you're supposed to do. All right. So let's go into Acts chapter 2, verse 44. So we were supposed to voluntarily share resources, and we're not supposed to have needy people among us. And that's what real so-called Christians do, real believers in Yahweh Bashem Yahshai do. So this is Acts chapter 2, verse 44. And all that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising the Most High, and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. Right? Next one. I'm going to move quickly now. This is Acts chapter 4, verse 32. And it says sharing among believers. And that's true. You got to share among believers. And that's really the brethren, the ones that believe in Yahweh Bashem Yoshai. That includes sisters and children as well. But people who believe in Yahweh Bashem Yoshai and the doctrine, you're supposed to help. You're supposed to help each other out. So this is Acts chapter 4, verse 32. It says, and the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and of one soul. Neither said any of them that aught of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had all things common. And with great power gave the apostles witness of the resurrection of our Lord Hamashiach, Yahushai, and great grace was upon them all. Neither was any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought them the prices of the things that were sold, and laid them down at the apostles' feet, and distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. Okay, so it's not about what you want, it's about what you need. Right? And that goes, man, you're supposed to help out the disciples and apostles, and starting with the leadership. But we're all apostles, we're all serving Yahweh Bashem Yoshai, we're all disciples under our Lord. So you're supposed to help everybody, but that starts with the leadership on down, obviously. But you're supposed to help those who are doing the work, who believe in Yahweh Bashem Yoshai, who are going out there bringing forth the law and the testimony. That means men who are teaching lessons online and also going out there on the highways and byways, right, and highways and hedges. But you're supposed to help them. Let me get this. This is Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. It says, learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed. And Israel is oppressed. Oppressed by who? The other nations, man. And that goes into the system that is set up. The system is set up to oppress you by not giving you good work, like look at these tariffs, man, that this guy is bringing forth. That's oppression. Oppression maketh a wise man mad. So people out here are oppressed, especially you Israelites. You Israelites, you're last hired, you're first fired. You don't have the complexion to match the selection, so you get fucked over. So you're really oppressed. So really, what we're here to do, we're supposed to relieve the oppressed. We're supposed to seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, and plead for the widow. And I just gave you example pleading for the widow. going into Ruth chapter 2. So Boaz was doing all these things, and this is what we're supposed to do as well. Anyways, that's all I got. This is a quick one. Going into universal basic income parallels. The parallels between UBI and the Bible. So I hope this was edifying. Salakia if it was a bit choppy. I'm just doing this off of the top of my head. Anyways, man, with that, I just want to give all praises, glory, and honor due unto Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone. To you I say Shalom, and Shalom unto the hopeful elect. Kwam Yashala Babal Shalom.